Hello, this is John Armwood, and I'm back on the Armwood Opinion channel. And this is my first recording in the month of June of 2019. And the year seems to be flying by for me. I guess it's probably the same for most of us. And as it flies by, we are watching the political situation in the United States become more and more chaotic. We've been talking about the Democrats' inability to handle Donald Trump and his crimes as outlined in the Mueller report. But we're seeing more and more Democrats coming out for impeachment. A handful of presidential candidates have led the way, and now 58 members of the House of Representatives have bucked the leadership of Nancy Pelosi and called for impeachment. An obvious constitutional remedy. Even the head of the Judiciary Committee in the House talked about constitutional remedies that might have to be used, which is a euphemism for impeachment. The only constitutional remedies that are available for the president if he commits high crimes and or misdemeanors. Remember, the president does not have to have committed a crime to be impeached, but he has to commit a high crime and or misdemeanor. And we know from the Mueller report that there are between 10 and 11 obvious cases of felonies, obstruction of justice. It's clear. And there's no question that he did it. Nobody is denying it anymore. Well over 1,000 prosecutors across the nation have signed a letter saying if that was you and I or any other American citizen but the president, he would have been charged with a felony. And those Democrats who were calling for censorship or anything but impeachment for political reasons are looking more and more foolish by the day as momentum turns against them and as people start to realize that we're going to have to, at some point, go to impeachment. It's inevitable. It's just, unfortunately, most people who opposed it hadn't bothered to read the report. And that's a problem that we do have, of course, with, every country has that. You have a lot of people who talk but don't do their homework. They're lazy. A lot of the people that, just don't want to do the work. And they like to give opinions, and they think all opinions are equal, which, as I've said before, they're not. They're those that are informed and we can have a reasonable disagreement among those. But those who are uninformed and don't know the actual facts, can't waste time on them. They're not, unfortunately, the opinion makers. We try to sway them, but you can't take uninformed opinions seriously. It's just something that is foolish to do. Other things, though, are going on also. And we're seeing tariffs being put on Mexican goods. Of course, it would be Mexican goods. And Trump is talking about ways to avoid tariffs on the British. And the race issue is never far from Trump's itinerary, from Trump's decision-making. The tariffs on China, the tariffs against Yahweh, are really about not wanting competition in the 5G space because Yahweh, the Chinese company, is way ahead of American companies technologically. Read The Verge magazine online. The Verge had a good article about that a couple of days ago. CNET has written about it. This is what it's all about, folks. It's about the United States engaging in protectionism, which we supposedly don't like. We're supposedly a supporter of free market capitalism, except when it comes to other people that might get ahead of us. And the Chinese are way ahead of us when it comes to 5G technology. ATA put out some fake 4G this past year and was ridiculed throughout the industry because they were claiming to have 5G when it was nothing but the same old 4G that they've had for years. So this trade war by Trump is nothing but an unethical, to a large extent, racist, international campaign to isolate countries like China so they will not be able to compete effectively with American companies. American companies like Google, who provide Android, no longer can support Yahweh's wonderful cell phones with the Play Store and other features because of these tariffs. This is what Trump is doing. You can't beat them fairly, you cheat. This is the kind of person he has always been. Those of us who grew up in New York know he was a gangster, he's dishonest, he's a cheater, he's low down, dirty, and slimy. This is the same low down, dirty, and slimy politics. There were some issues raised about Yahweh surveys possibly being used for China for spying, but there's no hard evidence on it. That's the thing. There's no hard evidence. What Trump has done is trying to disable Yahweh's ability to compete in the 5G space because they're way ahead. They're one of the biggest phone companies in the world. And Trump is trying to cripple them. He doesn't want Chinese competition. We're once more back to the racist ideology of the yellow plague that we had back in World War II. I mean, things don't change. As Derek Bell says, and I use it at the beginning of my video, we make progress in everything, but nothing seems to change. And Donald Trump is not isolated. Look at Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, who said next year that there's a Supreme Court vacancy in the last year of the Trump administration, he would fulfill it. But when President Obama was president, he said that you couldn't fulfill a Supreme Court vacancy in the last year of a president's term. This is the kind of dishonesty, the kind of political maneuvering that we're facing. And unfortunately, the Democratic Party is not effectively handling it. They're not willing to fight fire with fire. They're not willing to take these issues to the people and say, look, these people are playing games with you. They're being dishonest with you. And we are going to call them on it. Impeachment would be the beginning. You've got to show spine to a bully. Trump and Mitch McConnell are two bullies that the Democrats have to stand up to. But neither Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer, and Schumer isn't as bad as Pelosi, they have to stand up to them. And at least Chuck Schumer seems to be a little more sophisticated than Pelosi. But you got to fight these people. You've got to fight these people. When Pelosi gets on TV, I cringe. And I had a friend of mine say the same thing recently, that he saw what I was talking about in terms of her inability to communicate effectively orally. It's sad, but true. How do we battle this? We contact by email, by telephone, our Congress people, demand that they impeach them. It was interesting, after Memorial Day weekend, one of the congressmen got on TV and said he had been holding back and going with Nancy Pelosi's line on impeachment until he got home. And a lot of Democrats heard this. A vast majority of Democrats support impeachment. A vast majority of Democrats support impeachment. That's why they elected Democrats. But Democrats in the leadership are still trying to chase the old Reagan Republicans who left the party years ago. Obama was able, with his charisma and intelligence, to grab back some of them. Clinton wasn't able to do that. Her communication skills, even though she's extremely bright, her communication skills were not as effective as President Obama's. So we have to consolidate our base if we want to win. And the Democrats, once again, are taking the base for granted. Who is the base? People of color. Black folks, Hispanic folks, Latinx. These are folks that the Democrats are taking for granted. And we have to punish them for this. We have to make it clear to them. You take us for granted. Our enthusiasm for you is not going to be there. It's not something that we have to do intentionally. People are not stupid. They know if you're not really supporting them, they're not going to turn out in great numbers. I mean, Hillary Clinton found that out in 2016. And, you know, that was across the board. I mean, her major problems were, of course, in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Wisconsin, where white working class voters, many of whom had supported Obama, did not support her. And we have to understand that the Democrats need to first consolidate their base, make sure that the issues of their base are being addressed, and then move to expand out. That's common sense. I worked on my first political campaign 50 years ago with Mayor John Blight Lindsay of New York. And that's what he did in the campaign. And I worked very, very hard on that campaign. I was only 16 years old. I got a paid job on that campaign. I was officially an elevator operator. And I did that sometimes, but I did all sorts of things. I did all the walking tours. I got beer thrown on me with the mayor on Labor Day weekend 1969. and heckled President Nixon in front of the campaign headquarters. He was at the corner going to the 666 Club, a club that's been owned by Jared Kushner in recent years. It's so funny to see how these things go. Worked on Bella Abzug's first campaign, Charles Goodell for Senate. I mean, innumerable campaigns. And Goldberg, Patterson's, innumerable campaigns in the early years. Most recently on John Ossoff's campaign here in Georgia. You've got to consolidate your base. It's not rocket science. So if they don't know how to do it, we have to do it. We have to demand it. Those of us who care about our country, who care about our lives, care about our children, care about our grandchildren, and understand, and that's the key thing, understand what these issues are about. We must do what is necessary to put pressure on our politicians to do the right thing. And it seems like over the Memorial Day weekend, a lot of people put pressure on Democratic representatives to do the right thing. I'm very happy about that. I'm very happy to see that. And I think that slowly but surely, that even though they're dragging their feet, they're being pushed in the right direction. So remember, resistance is not futile. We have to keep on pushing. And if we keep on pushing, we can and will win. Have a good day, and I'll see you next week in the next video.